Again, my name is Teemu. I work for a nonprofit called MyData Global, and I'm here to talk about human-centric personal data and why. Why should we even care about such an issue? I often like to start with this picture. Actually, I don't know if any or remember this one. It's actually a picture from a couple of years ago that outlines where soldiers in Afghanistan have been doing jogging, walking, running, and it's publicly visualized. It's publicly visualized because people have not turned off their privacy settings. And this type of personal data you might have seen just within the last nearly 12 months in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. When Ukraine has been fighting back, they have been able to use the personal data leaked by Russian soldiers. So what I'm trying to say here is that personal data can be a matter of life and death. I also want to state out from something that the UN, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, said a few years ago, just commenting from a human rights perspective, that data collection is happening on an industrial scale. And in fact, that means that more and more aspects of our lives are being tracked. And yes, sometimes that's, of course, for a very, very good reason. But indeed, we all have created a digital trail reading right into this very room. So personal data is everywhere. Personal data is collected about us regarding skills and learning, your study credits or learning analytics or degrees. It's being gathered about smart rings like my Aura ring that I use to monitor my sleep and my exercise. It's being used or collected by all kinds of apps, whether we know it or not. Often we don't, often we do. And we know that that personal data is gathered about us because we have an incredible nuisance, which is the terms of service. Some of you might have seen this comment that all the apps that we use, on average over 200 per person, have such long privacy policies that it would take us 1/5 of a year to read that. 76, nearly 4 months, three and a half, nearly 3 months to read that. And which is why we click yes, I've read terms of service, and it's the biggest lie in human history. And we know that these terms of service are really long. This is a student project that has nicely printed out the terms of service for the big most popular social media services, and it's a pretty nice printout. It looks very graphic and modernistic, but it's terribly long. And it's not just about being a nuisance for our lives or being a human rights violation at times or risk harmful, but it's also stopping financial growth. So issues with personal data, in particular, the lack of trust, means that people are not going all the way with their digital purchases, for example, their digital trade. Something like between a third and 40% of digital transactions are actually stopped because at sometimes it feels shady, and people feel that they cannot trust the service provider. So it's also a huge issue for the economy. So what do we do about it? Well, I think you know by now with your SSI work that technologies like SSI can provide one way forward. I talk now more broadly about MyData, in which there is definitely a very strong linkage to SSI. So we think that MyData thinking has a role to play in solving some of these issues and solving some of the paradoxes that we want personal data to be collected and used, but we want it to be used in a good way. So our vision is a fair, sustainable, and prosperous digital society, and human-centric approach to personal data is one key element of that. It's not the only one, but it's part of the toolbox there. Now, the core idea of the MyData vision is that people should be in control of the data about themselves, the data that is gathered by various service providers, by the government, by public sector, and so on. And of course, we know that we can't have full control, not always. We would not have control of what the public sector, for example, gathers about us, but we should have some agency to make use of that data. So we aim at strengthening digital human rights, but we also know that businesses need personal data. We want to use personal data to build on trust, to build new innovative services. Now, the essence of this vision is that people should be getting value from their personal data. People should have a right to set the agenda on how that personal data is used. And at the same time, for organizations, the ethical use of data should be the most attractive option, the viable option. That means that it's, of course, bound legally, but also that it would make business sense or societal sense or otherwise be doable, not just some high flying thing. And some years ago, we wrote what's called the MyData Declaration, which kind of outlines some key things that need to happen for this type of a society and for this type of thinking to happen. And there are three kind of key things, three shifts or paradigm shifts that need to happen for this to become a reality. So first of all, we need to be able to move from formal to actionable rights. And this means that we have all kinds of digital rights that are given to us through GDPR, that are given to us through various other legislation, including some of the new EU legislations that are coming up. But often those rights are actually what we call formal rights. They are clumsy to exercise. If I ask for my data from a company, I need to get it back in 30 days. But we want it to be real time. We want to do it now. Secondly, we need to think of people as individuals to be empowered, not only protected. So people may combine and use that personal data for their own good, for understanding their health, for understanding their finance, and so on. And I will show some examples in a little bit. And then thirdly, we have been locked into the kind of technology silos. We've been taken over by a handful of giants. And you might have read or had a look at these efforts to get rid of or get away from some of the big ones. And it's surprisingly difficult. And it's surprisingly difficult because there is a lack of interoperability, and because not all data can be taken away from one service to another. We want to move from closed to open ecosystems, so we really have a choice to change from one service provider to another one. Just like we can very easily change our telecom providers or our bank providers, for example. Now, to make these shifts a reality, we have defined further what we call the MyData principles, and then kind of roles what we see happening. I'm not going to go into these ones. If you find this interesting, I hope you can Google or find MyData declaration and have a look. And of course, I welcome you to sign and take part in multiple ways. I get back to that also in a little bit. Another way to frame this thinking of MyData is to think about the kind of strength or weakness of data protection and how much data is wanted to be used. So the idea is that in MyData, people decide, and we want strong data protection, while at the same time we want lots of data usage. And here, by comparison, simply complying with GDPR is nice, and it's of course required by law, but that alone does not allow data to flow. The data flows can be slow. In old paper times, you might have had weak data protection papers lying about, and it's very difficult to reuse that data. Now, Google, Facebook, and the big tech will likely claim that they have strong data protection and lots of data usage. Yes, that might be true in some ways, but in practice, for example, through the deceitful design, for example, through the terms of service that are difficult to understand and lengthy to read, de facto, the data protection is indeed weak, although legal for sure most of the time. Of course, they are in legal battles also, so it's not that's a great reminder that sometimes it's not even legal what they're doing. So all of this, what I said, is kind of nice, and but it's a bit abstract, right? So I thought that I might show a couple of examples of what this kind of MyData thinking means in practice. And what I would maybe encourage you to think about is that is the self-sovereign identity is that a capable technology or capable kind of solution way of implementing these types of use cases? These ones do not use SSI as far as I know. And then also to think about that, is there something that is in these use cases that SSI could or could not do? Maybe there are things that it's not suitable for. So first of all, what we are looking at here is a picture from an event I was attending 3 weeks ago in Helsinki. Part of a roadshow that a company called Vastu Group was handling. And this gentleman you see with the colorful hat, what he has done is he has installed a mobile app, and he's here meeting a recruitment services provider, because based on what he has selected in the app, he has been recommended to meet with particular service providers. This is like a job recruitment fair situation right here. We had about 100 people there, mainly in this case from the construction industry. So basically construction industry workers, carpenters, painters, and people like that, skilled in what they do, maybe not so skilled in making good-looking CVs. And the solution, the mobile app that this gentleman is using, the vision that Vastu has is that on your left you see a citizen nicely in the center, this gentleman. Well, he has all kinds of information about his education, things like study records, maybe certificates. He has maybe qualifications like driver's license, like rights to do certain things like electrical maintenance or things like that. He probably has some human preferences, dreams, hobbies, interests, life goals, has some permits, perhaps some work permits or residence permits, or maybe has some Kela support or something for that is meaningful to the employer, has some experience, has some recommendations, references, working history, and of course has ID related things, address, social security number, tax number, and so on. And we would like that type of information not to be manually entered, but rather automatically with his consent to be put into various types of recruitment systems, human resource management systems, talent pool services, and so on. And this is what this Vastu Group's reliable worker service is doing. In these pilot phases, not all of this is available, but quite a few of these are being tested out and tested out with particular recruitment services. And the goal is to make life easier for this gentleman, but the goal is also to make life easier for the people in the construction industry, which are heavily having trouble with getting qualified employees quickly. It's causing damage to their projects, and of course, society is losing out, both in terms of the kind of financial growth, as well as then having to pay, for example, unemployment benefits. So we are trying to speed this up. Now, of course, the idea of having this type of skills data and work-related data is not only related to recruitment. It can be used for a whole bunch of other things. For example, lifelong learning. You can be recommended that, you have experience in the construction industry. You are perhaps a army officer. You have done XYZ courses. Maybe by doing one or two things, you are now qualified to apply for jobs that you previously were not qualified to apply for. So trying to give kind of career counseling. And this is something that, by the way, all the universities in Finland are working together how to do this better in the future, how to make sure that they are able to do counseling and take students' backgrounds better into account. And then finally, the kind of companies or industries as a whole can use this type of data to forecast the skills demand so that they can plan studies, plan curricula, courses, and such for the years ahead. So this is the type of thinking that we are aiming for in what we call the skills data ecosystem. And this area of skills data is one, like I showed in the beginning, it's one of many, but one that's quite interesting at the moment. And I would suspect that some of you have done your projects perhaps related to something in this area, because I know that there are also SSI related projects related to this. The other example I wanted to tell, and please tell me, Gabriel, how much time I have, maybe a few more minutes, is that in the context of smart cities, and I use here, instead of a Finnish example, a French example. So the city of Lyon, just like all cities across the world, are struggling with not only with the electricity prices going up, but also with climate change as a whole. So what they have done is bring electricity, water, and gas usage through what is called a data intermediary into an application called Ecolio. so that individuals better understand their usage and can do something based on that. So of course you would want to understand better what kind of a price you are paying, and perhaps using that information ask to get better prices from different providers. But that's not all. What Lyon is doing is that they are actually making this into a game. And why they are making it into a game is that they want to change the behavior of families, not only the parents, but also of the kids, the children, wanting to get them to be excited about turning off the lights or using less water, and through that being able to, for example, get these new avatars and progress in the game, or for the greater good of combating climate change. So this was an example from Finland, example from France, and I know that I don't have much time, so I will scroll very quickly through a couple of notes, just stating that this topic right now is quite hot. And has been for a few years in local, national, and regional levels, meaning that cities, countries, and regions like European Union are actively acting on topics like this. Particularly, the European data strategy and thus the European data policies have recognized the MyData movement as one that promises benefits to individuals through use cases like the one I explained here in health and wellness, finance, environmental footprint, and so on. And similarly, worldwide organizations like the World Economic Forum have highlighted the need for human-centric approaches to data. And I'm not going to read through this list, but it was just something that a colleague of mine, Vivi, was actually writing and working with the World Economic Forum on this one. I want to highlight that to make this happen, to make this all happen, we need different perspectives. We need business, legal, tech, social sciences, designers, ethicists. It's not coming only from one perspective. It's also not being only solved in Finland or only solved in Europe or only solved in the US. It's a very global issue to be solved at very, very local levels, but also very international levels. Thus, I want to skip some information about MyData as an organization, just saying that we are acting globally, acting in different languages and different places across the world with exciting organizations ranging from all kinds of startups to international giants like Capgemini or Fujitsu or the like. Acting around the world, in communities, in country chapters, specifically in Europe and Asia, but also overall on 6 continents. And finally, as a potential follow-up to your course, and I suspect that some of you may be interested, we organize yearly a conference that gathers about 600 to 800 people to Helsinki from all around the world, from about 40 or 50 countries. And we are actually right now interested also in hiring, first of all, 2 interns to work with us, but also needing some volunteers to do various types of research work and on-site work. So if you're interested in the topic of personal data, this is a great way to connect potentially with your future employers, connect with other people who are interested, and learn a heck of a lot about what's happening in practice. And the theme of the conference this year, by the way, is human-centric data in practice. So with that, I think I've used my time and perhaps a few minutes more We had a little bit of tech issues there at the start. Once again, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. And of course, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to engage in that. Passing it over to you, Gabby.
Thank you very much, Teemu Ropponen. Please give a big applause for him.